Bon dia. So allow me as the president of the Security Committee of ACI to welcome each and every member to this webinar that is facilitated by ACI Africa. And we want to appreciate the team, particularly from the Secretariat, starting from the Secretary General, Mr. Ali Tunzi, the team that we are hosted with them here, we have Banel, Ramash, and Kennedy. And of course, our presenter, who is Millicent from the East Africa School of Aviation in Kenya. Why do we need this security webinar? The purpose and essence, the need for us to have this webinar on security fundamental is to enlighten all our colleagues in the industry from all airports and industry for the need for the continual improvement on matter security. Technological advancement is here with us. Due to technology, the world has become a small village, a global village, and therefore continual improvement on matters aviation is critical for us. And therefore, as a security committee sitting at ACI last time in Luanda, in Angola, we sought permission from the Secretariat and we were granted this approval. Therefore, we are grateful and allow me to welcome each and every member who is here with us. Before I proceed to introduce our guest speaker for the day, allow me to mention that we will be having more of these forums, specifically going to the future to build capacity and to ensure that ACI has visibility across all our airports. So screening and passenger facilitation under Annex 9 and Annex 17 on security is fundamental for us as a committee. So within the discretion of the chair, allow me to give my colleagues who have worked towards this just a minute to say hi, Banel, Ramash, and Kennedy. Just introduce yourself, then I'll go up, I'll proceed to introduce the presenter.
Thank you, Rogers. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I am Aja Banyanja as Manager Training and Administration of ACI Africa, and thank you for joining us today in this webinar.
Ramesh, sorry. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Kenneth Fargens, Manager Security and Operation, ACI Africa. You're all welcome to this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ramesh, are you able to hear us? Bonjour.
Oh, you can proceed directly, Roger. It's fine. I think maybe he's in a call. Thank you.
Maybe. Okay. Instruction, please ensure that the microphone on your camera and your device are switched off. Your question will be answered at the end of the presentation. During the presentation, you can use the message function to send your question to the moderator. Please utilize your chat message to send the directly question to the moderator, and I'll bring it to the attention of the speaker as we proceed. So that is important. Please mute your microphone so that we have a harmonious discussion going on forward. Let's move to the next. Let me introduce the speaker for the day. Allow me to have this singular duty to introduce Millicent Henga. She's a strategic leader with over 22 years leadership in advancing ICAO compliance, AFSEC governance, aviation security across Africa and the global aviation community. She has worked for 14 years at Kenya Airport Authority, delivering safe, secure, efficient airports in line with ICAO standards and recommended practices. Ms. Millicent Henga has over 5 years experience in training and oversight developing competent AFSEC professional and strengthening institutional capacity across the region. She is recognized for transforming AFSEC training, strengthening competence frameworks, and building a culture of security and compliance. Trusted advisor and a collaborator, driving intelligent, risk-based, and future-ready aviation security solutions. She's an instructor for the East Africa, as assistant director, based at the East African School of Aviation under the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. She holds a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in security management. She is also a certified ICAO instructor, instructing for this region and other regions. We will not have had any other professional of choice to deliver this topic on fundamental security fundamentals other than a person who is diligent, passionate, and has focused her entire life to advance matters of aviation security. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite to the stage our presenter who has several achievements that I don't want to enumerate. Millicent Henga, you have the forum, and please proceed to discuss the topic at hand. Thank you very much.
Hello. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And this is a great forum for the global aviation, because it is from this forum that the general industry is able to appreciate what aviation security is. And you realize for us to be appreciating fundamentals of aviation security, it definitely has to be anchored from a strategic AFSEC leadership point, which enables us to be compliant, resilient, and have a regional collaboration to strengthen a strong industry that is able to protect the industry against acts of unlawful interference, because aviation is a global community where passengers, the public, people move from point A to point B. It's like a connecting point where it has to be well structured for it to be able to safeguard, because considering it's a target. So therefore, it is very critical for us to be able to have a strong system, but it has to be led by leadership. Aviation security is literally it's safeguarding aviation industry against acts of unlawful interference. And for us to be able to do this, we have to combine measures, human and material resources to enable us have three components that is going to give a strong foundation or a backbone to having the right system in place. The global evolution of aviation resilience is literally with the backdrop of cyber threats, which is quite critical. Aviation industry is a target to acts of unlawful interference, to terrorism. If you look at the aviation compared to other industries, this is the most targeted industry because it has the multinationals. It's an industry where you find all communities, all the global aviation, literally all states are dissecting and passing through the aviation industry, and therefore it is a critical industry. We have technology, which is also taking us very fast to be able to catch up with it. We have to bring in technology, but this technology is also acting as a threat if it is misused, if it is in the wrong hands of the operators or the non-operators who give information. It is able to give us a critical threat to the global aviation, which is very serious, because right now in the era of AI, you need to have a system that is resilient based in terms of sustaining the disruptions that are able to occur, in terms of, in case of a disruption, how are we able to get back to our feet? So that is why we need to have a system that really is able to sustain the threat, is able to sustain the industry pressure, which we often consider that we are a target. The industry is a target. Therefore, we need to have a system where it is resilient to the pressure, to the threats that is evolving each and every time. If you look at the threat 10 years ago, it's totally different from the threat we have today. And therefore, what measures do we put in place as aviation leaders to be able to protect this industry against acts of unlawful interference? So we also have got the evolving asymmetric threats, which if you look at the type of threat systems we had before, it's totally different from today. The previous one was so conventional. We could be talking about combination, bringing a complete bomb. That is totally different from what we are looking at today. And therefore, the leaders must be able to understand this to know how best they are able to reshape the aviation industry. How airports can able to cooperate with interconnected resilience ecosystems, because one state has a different type of threat from another region. How are we able to ensure that as we cross borders, we are able to have a system that is able to protect as we cross the industry, as we cross the borders, that is so firm, because there's threat, border threats, world war. Yes, we have so much critical issues that are affecting the industry that can also affect the aviation itself. And we also have got the interconnected resilience ecosystem. For you to move from one border to the other, there's a lot of legislative policies that have been put in place that if they are not well harmonized, and I know that is what really one of the key strategic points of ACI, to ensure that the governments are able to harmonize their systems to ensure there is proper flow and understanding between one state and the other. If that is not aligned, then that is also going to bring a lot of conflicts from one state to the other. We have passenger confidence depends on effective security governance. If you don't have effective personnel who are well trained, if you don't have proper policies, proper legislations, then you're also not going to have proper systems in place. And thus, you're going to have a lot of acts of unlawful interference taking place. And by the end of the day, you are going to miss passengers. We are not going to have an aviation system where passengers can have trust that they can be able to build confidence in and make it a choice of means of transportation. Then we also have the modern AFSEC foresight, which is very critical. If you look at the aviation leadership today, it's totally different. We need to see aviation leaders who understand how critical it is to be able to have the aviation industry that is strong, that has a strong system. And we talk about strong system is supported from the policy level, because if you have no support from the policy level, like now having in a case where you are supposed to have international requirements, international regulations, which then you are supposed to domesticate them to be able to have a system in place. But this is all going to take place if you have a system that is strong, leadership that is strong, that understands the reason why, where they need to be able to make security, which is definitely it's the enabler of aviation growth. If you don't have a strong security system where you have no proper trained personnel, you do have no proper legislations or regulations or oversight systems, then you're going to have a system in place which is shaky, which is not strong, which has no foundation, and therefore it needs to be guided, because if we don't have a strong security, then there is no aviation existing. And that's the enabler we are talking about, where aviation security is an enabler to growth in the aviation system. What about resilience? We are talking about business continuity. Many times you may have scenarios where an act of unlawful interference that's taken place globally. We all know the incidences we've experienced. And if you look at it critically, if those various states are not stable from a point of having a contingency plan, emergency plans to be able to get back to their feet, we definitely know they will close up. We have had incidents where a whole airline has closed down because they did not have a strong strategic point in terms of emergency procedures or contingency plans. So we need to have a system that is so firm, so strong, that is able to beat the threshold or the pressure or the emergency situations that is coming by each and every time. Effective security supports connectivity and economic growth. When you're having a system where there's quality control, you have strong legislations, you have strong oversight team. We're talking about auditors and inspectors. You're having effective trained systems, personnel, equipments. Because when you talk about an AFSEC system, we're talking about personnel, we're talking about equipments, we're talking about procedures. If you don't have an effective one, then you're not going to have an economic growth, because you're going to have unnecessary acts of unlawful interference which can be protected. We have got facilitation, which remains, we're talking about facilitation, which comes from Annex 9. And when you talk about Annex 9 here, we are expecting proper coordination among all the stakeholders, whether it is the migration or the airline or the ground handler or the security. How long are we taking to facilitate passengers? But as we do this, we must take into consideration the factors and the procedures in place for AFSEC, so that we have personnel who are also, as they implement facilitation, they are also embracing security procedures, so that we don't do more of facilitating passengers and forget about the security aspect. What about the security posture enhancement into airport competitiveness? If you are an industry or aviation or a state that is very strong in terms of leadership, in terms of procedures, you are definitely going to have a strong system which passengers can trust, which the global aviation can trust, and they're able to confidently pass through our borders because they know very well the security there is quite firm.
Excuse me, Madam Milset.
Yes, please.
Allow me to notify the participants, the delegates, that we have interpreters, real-time interpreters. If you opt to choose the option for French, you will be getting the discussion live so that we don't leave our interpreters behind. Unlike Banel from Senegal, who speaks English and French, some of our colleagues may be having challenges. So I thought it's necessary to clarify that. Sorry for interference.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification, so that we don't leave anybody behind. Now, what is the core aviation principles and best practices that can be embraced by states, and more so in Africa? We are talking about risk-based approach, which definitely improve the operational effectiveness. Do we have the mechanisms to be able to carry out threat assessment, vulnerability identification, the risk mitigation? What risk mitigations do we have in place? What strategies have we put in place to manage the cybercrime, cybersecurity? We have the insider threat, where we have the staff who have been empowered, who have been given so much information pertaining, critical information that pertains to the running of aviation industry. How are we managing them to ensure we carry out proper background checks, so that we have personnel who really know very well they have to uphold the integrity and the trust given to them to prevent acts of unlawful interference, because they could be the same people who can pass information. So we must have an intelligent-led security coordination among the entities, among the industry, so that we ensure that by all means we guard the systems in place. When you talk about risk mitigation, do we put in place, have we identified our risk? What are the threats that we have identified? And have we put mechanisms in place? I know we have got we have ICAO, which has given the risk content statement, which is guiding states on how they're able to carry out risk assessment, on how they're able to also do the categorization to know what is the risk in your area and what is the priorities. Because if you don't have risk mitigations, don't have a risk threat, you're not able to prioritize your resources so that you put them in the right place to mitigate the critical risks as they come by. Integrated system in the security also contributes in the enhancement of security, and it leads to accountability. And here we are talking about having the equipments which are managed, which is up to date, which is modern, having trained personnel who understands how these equipments are supposed to be operated. We are also talking about leadership that understands the need for proper training of personnel who understands their roles, and also who understands the equipments that are in place, who understands the procedures, the legislations, and all that. The continuous improvement is also important. And therefore, leaderships must drive enterprise security consciousness. If they do not understand the legislation, international obligation to them as a state, then rest assured, we are going to have a system that is just following procedures, because we are beyond just following procedures. We must ensure that life is a priority, and therefore, for life to be a priority, systems are in place. Capability development sustains operational resilience. That is definitely when you have competent personnel, competent oversight, strong leadership, continuous training, you're going to have a strong system that is going to protect, that is everybody is aware. We have awareness that is carried out among the personnel at the airport. And therefore, you're going to have a system in place which is guided from leadership all the way to the operational level, who understands that they've got to understand their threat around their environment. They know the actions they're supposed to take, the measures that are being put in place, and that is able to help us have a strong system. Then also among the stakeholders, you need to have a very strong collaboration between the airline, the ground handler, the government entities, the emergency teams, and all that. They need to know at what point, when we have an emergency, how are they going to come in? Is our emergency operations center, at what point is it going to be activated? Who is going to activate it? so that we can be able to ensure collaboration among other states. We must have an inter-community. We say that aviation is global. Communities must have strong relationship within their borders so that they can be able to even share information of threats that within their borders, or there's likely. We have got the passenger advance information that has also been in place, where one state is able to communicate to another pertaining to threats or pertaining to individuals who are on the radar, who needs to be pointed out. Let's say maybe they're on the list of Interpol, who needs to be marked and not be allowed entity into any of the states. But then now, what are the strategic workforce capability and AFSEC awareness? Here we are talking about the need for awareness and what's important is awareness contributes to a lot of vigilance. Security is everyone's responsibility. That's what we've always said. And it cannot just be left for the security personnel alone. We must ensure that we bring on board all airport stakeholders, because the security agencies cannot be everywhere all airport stakeholders are, or where all critical installations are. And therefore, it is just important that all airport stakeholders go through training awareness so that they are aware of the threat in the environment and the action they're supposed to take, the critical communication lines they need to have. They need to know, when you talk about competency-based training, we need to have personnel who understands how to deliver, how to perform specific tasks. It's not just going to understand. We need them to demonstrate. We need them to perform tasks as per the standards, because if we are talking about lives here, and these are the people implementing the measures, they need to get the right training. What about the certification they're going to go through? It must be anchored. It must be streamlined. It must bring out the competency they understand. We must have quality auditors and inspectors who are going to monitor the implementation of AFSEC procedures. Because if you don't have competent oversight team, then they will not be able to appreciate what the standards are, the measures, and the level of competency required of them. When you talk about continuous learning that supports adaptability, aviation is evolving. And because it is evolving, we have so many threat changes. The threat context is different from time to time. And it is important that we have continuous training, continuous awareness, continuous workshops in the region, where we talk about forums like this one here, which is quite important. We share a lot of knowledge pertaining to the aviation industry and the evolving threat. When we're having a lot of workshops and seminars and webinars, it creates a lot of training, a lot of awareness, a lot of learning, a lot of knowledge that is given to the global aviation for them to be able. It's a means of sensitization, which really builds on what our role really is when it comes to building capacity and enabling aviation industry to be a place of choice compared to other means of transport. We have several ways in which we are able to maintain operational resilience. We're talking about the incident response readiness. Are all staff aware of the measures they have in place? Do they know the procedures in case of emergency that they are supposed to? In case of an incident, do they know what actions they're supposed to take? What about crisis communication? Do we have procedures in place at the airport that have been put in place? I know we have all airports, according to their national security program, they've got to put in place contingency plan. And the contingency plan, one of the things in place is the crisis management. And crisis management has got all those who are supposed to be participating so that we have proper coordination. Because if you don't have coordination within a crisis, then you rest assured you're not going to arrest the situation, or you're going to increase the level of loss of lives and destruction of property. And therefore, crisis communication is very important, and that forms part of the awareness that we talked about, so that all stakeholders are informed of the actions they are supposed to take. Multi-agency coordination. During a situation where we are having emergencies or critical situations, we must be resilient. We must have systems in place that is going to sustain, that is going to wither the threat that is at hand as at that time. And that calls about the coordination among the agencies, the airlines, the ground handlers, the police, the national intelligence and all that, so that we are able to get back to the recovery position. We must have a recovery plan in place. And if we don't have that, then we are not going to have a system in place. We're not going to have business continuity. We're not going to have operational continuity. And it all boils down to planning for us to be able to have an airport that is ready during any resilient situation. Building high performance or security cultures is very critical. We talk about a security culture. Security culture is a norm. It's a behavior. It's a way of life. It's how we present ourselves. It's how an organization presents itself, which is definitely seen from the behaviors and the way of life of how their personnel carry out themselves. And therefore, we are able to tell, are they alert? Are they vigilant? Are they aware? And this can only take place for them to be able to, they can only be vigilant if they're taken through awareness. And if there is positive work environment, when we talk about positive work environment here, we're talking about an environment where staff can comfortably report issues. They have a working system. They have got equipment that is protecting them from emergencies, from incidences. We're talking about training. Are they well trained to understand their core duties? The leadership from the top. We usually talk about the buy-in. If the top management does not support security functions, then you are not going to have well-resourced system in place. You're not going to have well-equipped system. You're not going to have well-trained personnel. And understanding the threat, it is important that all stakeholders understand threat in their environment so that they're able to know unattended bug. They're able to know that there is somebody looks suspicious, which they need to communicate. They want to know the threats to civil aviation so that they can be able to guard themselves. They know the rules in place. They must be vigilant. As I said earlier on, security is not everywhere. Security personnel are not everywhere. Meaning, through awareness, everybody must be vigilant to report issues. Reporting system in place. Is it a just reporting system? Or we are going to have a system where it's punitive. If you report, you're going to be held for almost 2-3 days being questioned just because you gave an information. So we need to have a just reporting system. What about the incident response? How long do the entities responsible to respond to incidents take? How firm are they? Or how fast are they? That is also going to bring out our culture in the system. Information system, what about our passwords, our security information? Yes, what about the critical documents pertaining to aviation information? How are they handled? Can staff easily come out with them, or you have to put evidence at the access point that this information must not come out? What about sharing of the password or in public places? How do we guard? How do we protect our industry? And protecting the industry is even also the information. Today, we have the AI. Artificial intelligence is really reckoning in our system. We have situations where a lot of cyber terrorism has taken place. So we need to ensure information management is critical. And what about the measures of effectiveness? We can only measure effectiveness through audits, quality control, reduction of threats, of incidences. We have increase of audits. That is enough to tell you how effective our systems are. When you carry out a vulnerability assessment and you're able to sail through without challenges, then you know you have a strong system. Okay. Then, yes, the next. Here we talk about Annex 17 and the governance maturity. Annex 17 contains standards and recommended practices, which is given to states. We have a total of 993 member states who are subscribing to this Annex 17. It contains the security bare minimum measures that states are able to embrace to protect them from acts of unlawful interference. And here we are audited through the USAP CMA, that is CMA's USAP Continuous Monitoring Assessment Program, to evaluate how effective the Annex 17 is, to ensure that states are ready for any eventuality to protect themselves in case of an act of unlawful interference, let's say terrorism. How are the measures in place? How are their contingency plans in place to be able to mitigate? How are their daily measures, practices, the culture we talked about of getting used to doing the process as expected daily? With that, you're able to know very well you are protecting the industry. And you're going to be compliant, because if you're able to monitor the security measures as described in Annex 17, then compliance should be viewed as a strategic assurance, because it is from that that you're able to know if any threat takes place here, how long are you going to go back to your normal operations? That is going to tell you of your compliance level and your integrity in terms of governance. And that can only be in place if we have strong legislations, which give support into Annex 17, which enables us to draw regulations, which give support into the National Security Program. And it's from the National Security Program that we draw the Airport Security Program, the Ground Handler, Airline Security Program. And by the end of the day, all these entities are going to draw SOP for that personnel at the ground, at the operational level, at the access to the aircraft, at the access to the terminal. They should be having a standard operating procedure that gives a direction on how best they're able to protect themselves or the measures in place before anybody goes in, and how they're going to screen. What are the mechanisms? What are the equipment in place? What about the behavior detection to enable them protect the industry against acts of unlawful interference as enshrined in Annex 17? And remember, other than Annex 17, we also do our national risk assessment So we don't just implement Annex 17 alone. We have, as a state, each state has to carry out a risk assessment to enable them identify their threat. And with that, we will be able to have a strong system, a national security program that not just protects us from, enable us to be compliant through Annex 17, but also protects us as a state and protects other states that are subscribing to the collaboration and the global aviation. Thank you very much. For us to be able to implement the USAP CMA, that is continuous monitoring, or to protect the industry, or to ensure compliance, then we have got critical elements. And critical elements are building blocks that encompasses the whole spectrum of aviation security activities upon which an aviation security oversight system is based. So meaning it has to be anchored on some benchmark. So the level of effectiveness implementation of the critical elements is an indication of a state's capability for aviation security. So the critical elements, ideally, is the backbone for aviation security. The measures we put in place, we measure them against the critical elements. If you're not able to manage any of the critical elements, then that tells you the compliance level. And when we talk about a low compliance level, then meaning the risk is high of an attack. So we have got critical elements, which are 8 critical elements, which are the backbone for our aviation protection and majorly aviation security. And the critical elements form the foundation of AFSEC oversight, as I indicated earlier on, and it literally reflects the state's oversight capability. Are we capable of protecting the industry? Do we have strong measures? Do we have strong leadership? Do we have strong oversight systems, regulations? How firm are they? Are they reviewed adequately to enable the state to protect itself? Is it benchmarked? How critical is it so that we have other international bodies coming to audit an industry and finding that that state, yes, it meets the threshold? What about the governance maturity strengthens resilience and compliance? When we're having poor governance, rest assured, we're not going to have compliance. When you have a strong governance that knows very well that it has to have security compliance systems, auditors or inspectors who are trained, well-trained, airlines who are well-trained, then they're going to meet the relevant critical elements. These are the 8 critical elements I talked about. The first one, it has to have aviation security legislations. We have a number of international legislations, and we also have got our national legislations as a state. So these two needs to be put together to have a strong legislation within the state that supports civil aviation activities. If you don't have that, then you're going to have a problem in terms of governance and in terms of compliance. We have got the program, security program, which is critical element number 2. Here we're talking about national regulations. Once we have developed our legislations, then which is not very easy to amend because it is done by the members of parliament, then we need to have regulations which we can amend on need basis. And here it is going to enable us also draw the national security program, the national training program, the national quality control program, which also gives birth to the airport security program, the airline security program, or the air operator security program, ground handler, regulated agents. All these entities that are all supporting the national security program, we are getting them under critical element number 2 because it contains the procedures in place that protects us. We have critical element number 3, which is appropriate authority. Do we have a system, an administration that is going to ensure the proper management of the aviation security? We have got the CAS, the regulator, the appropriate authority that is charged with the responsibility of developing, implementing, and maintaining the national security program. That is where we are having that point, the critical element number 3. And therefore, we must ensure we have a strong system. When you talk about critical element number 4, we're talking about personnel qualification and training. Do we have competent personnel? Are they well trained on their key tasks? Are they supported equipment-wise? What about the environment? Is it a good, conducive working environment? Training, we're talking about certification system. Do you have a system in place that is able to ensure you have all personnel operating in the same level? Critical element number 5 is about guidance, tools, and information. Do we have like the oversight system, the auditors and inspectors? Do they have proper guiding system so that they're able to know what is the compliance level required of them, the level of let's say the security program and the Doc 8973 reference material that they're able to benchmark with, legislation that they're able to benchmark with, and all that stuff? We have critical element number 6, which talked about certification and approval obligation. We have an airline here that wants to come into operation in your state. We have, let's say, a ground handler wants to be recognized as a ground handler or as a regulated agent, or wants to be recognized as any entity who wants to operate in your airport. We must have structures in place on how they are going to be approved and certified to ensure that they are implementing a security program that is acceptable, that is protecting the industry within as they carry out their business, as they do their business. And critical element number 7 is quality control obligation. Do they give support? Do we have legislations or regulations that support the oversight system? Do they have resources that are available to them that protect, that support the oversight system, the auditors, the inspectors, so that they're able to oversight the national security program effectively? And we have lastly the critical element number 8, which is resolution of security concerns. We have carried out an audit. We have had a number of concerns in terms of caps, okay? Do the state have the capability to be able to resolve, to follow up with the entities, to ensure that all those non-compliances have been resolved adequately in on a timely manner, okay? So that is very, very critical, and that's where I said critical elements are a benchmark and are a backbone for aviation security. And as you see from critical element number 1 all the way to 5 are establishment. But from critical element number 5, 6 to 7 and 8 are implementation, which definitely goes towards monitoring to ensure effectiveness. And then now the next, please. Regional collaboration and experience sharing. This is about cross-border collaboration, which strengthens aviation resilience. And it has often been displayed. We have seen that through a lot of seminars, a lot of workshops, which have been organized regionally, where states can be able to share notes. They're able to come together to benchmark, to share what are the problems in the region. What about the leadership, the global states leadership? And that is where the ACI really comes in place, so that we cannot have stringent legislations that is hindering other states from getting into or operating within our own states. Experience sharing promotes harmonized practices, definitely. When we have got states giving their experiences as they cross borders or as they go to other states, we are able to know the tab stops, the challenges that they go through. And with that, we expect that governments, states are able to harmonize their legislations, which gives support to operations for different entities and different airlines or different states to be able to cross borders without much tension because of legislations. We have collective leadership that supports Africa aviation future. Definitely, you don't work in isolation. As we stated earlier on, aviation is a global family. And therefore, we must ensure that at all times, we are working in harmony, we are working in teamwork, we are thinking about tomorrow, not just today. Africa must know that we must have a collective leadership where we can be able to bring our strategic legislations together. We compare notes where we are able to harmonize to prevent unnecessary border issues, border challenges, or border wars because of stringent measures in place. So that we must be very much ready as leaders, and it depends on the kind of system we have in place. Now, how do we position ourselves as Africa in the next, for the future aviation growth? We have innovation which will align to the ICAO GASEP. When you talk about ICAO GASEP here, we're talking about how innovation is able to be in place. How are we able to build a better aviation system which is different from what we had previously? Yes? So therefore, through the GASEP system, the GASEP objectives, we have states coming up with different formulas and approaches of how they're able to have systems in place, even to include even designs of aircraft that is able to improve the systems, that is able to improve a brief aviation. We have technology which must balance between security and accessibility. Technology is good, but at the same time, it's a hindrance. That's one thing we must know. And therefore, we must be very vigilant, and we must have it balanced, because definitely, how are we going to ensure that we trust every technology that is in place? Earlier on, I talked about the AI. We must ensure that we have limitations. We have measures in place to prevent or to identify the gaps or hackers and all that stuff. If you don't have that, then it's going to be a hindrance. Future-ready leadership depends on strategic adaptation, meaning if we must be ready to change. We must not be rigid, because we must flow with the time as it goes by. And in Africa also, we must ensure that we are not lagging behind. Lagging behind is through the GASEP system. Lagging behind is knowing very well what are the technological changes that we are able to build on, okay, that we are able to adopt to improve our system. We also have got expanding Africa connectivity. That is another way. It should not be difficult for you to move from one state to the other. The other day, I was going to do a training. We are going to have the collaboration we are talking about. We are having the airport, aviation security training centers, directors and coordinators meeting, and we were going to Tunisia. Interesting enough, it took me 14 hours to get to Tunisia. Quite unfortunate. I had to take about 10 hours in one of the states for me to be able to reach Tunisia and for me to be able to come back to Kenya. Why? Meaning we have difficulty in connectivity. So are we able to find ways easy that we are able to go through borders comfortable without going through all long routes to be able to get to African states? Yeah. What about the regional cooperation? That is going to increase our connectivity. How are we relating with other states? What are the cooperations we are able to come together? I know ACI really does this quite a lot. I've seen several times ACI coming to Kenya, and definitely I've seen the objectives of ACI, which ideally brings the harmonization of states in terms of their policies, in terms of their governance, to be able to bring good cooperation among states. Harmonized AFSEC implementation is very crucial. And here we talked about, earlier on, when I talked about our national procedures, our legislations. It must be one that is not difficult for another state to do business or to come in. In terms of, let's say like border control, we are talking about passports. We have sometimes, as a coordinator, coordinating the region, I have challenges several times where passengers have to call me. I mean, my participants who are coming for training here, they have to call me. They are stuck in certain areas because of our procedures in terms of passport control or entry visas and all that stuff. How are we harmonizing this to prevent these stop or delays or passengers losing their flights because of the border issues and all that stuff? Shared learning platforms. This is one of them. How many times are we able to organize such kind of trainings where we can share experiences? We can bring an instructor from another region to be able to share, or participants coming on the same platform where we are able to compare notes. This can only be done when we have proper leadership. And that, in essence, is enabling us to have a proper future aviation system, which is strong, which is based on strong foundations. As we move towards the end of this webinar, we have the strategic leadership takeaways, and we are talking about lead proactively as leaders. As states, we must lead proactively. And here we must anticipate the evolving threats through innovation, resilience, and adaptive leadership. Many times people say that AFSEC is reactive. It could be true. It's because we don't anticipate. And so if you don't anticipate, then what do you expect? We'll always be running after incidents. And when they happen, then we start like, okay, what measure can we put in place? If you look at when we had got the coming in of body scanners, where did it evolve from? We had somebody who decided to now have an underwear bomber. Yeah, so when you have an underwear bomber in place, or meaning somebody can be able to conceal something in their body. And so the body scanners came into place for us to be able to see what has been concealed in the body. We are reacting. So we need to have our lead proactively, having strong oversight systems who are trained, having strong personnel. We are also building sustainable security system. A sustainable security system strengthens governance. It strengthens people, personnel who are trained. It ensures we have quality training, not just training. It is current and meets the global threat, the current threat in aviation. Security culture, through proper sustainable system, you're going to have a culture where everybody knows this is the rule of operations. And it is one that everybody is involved. It's everyone's business. And definitely it's going to sustain AFSEC, which is very critical. If you don't have that, then we are hindering. Enabling future-ready aviation security, we have to leverage on cooperation. There's no joke about, any hesitant about that. Technology is one thing we cannot run away. GASEP alignment is quite crucial when it comes to balanced security. We have to ensure we bring in that. Facilitation is very key as well. We must ensure that we have smooth entry and exit within our states. Accessibility to our information. How is it easy for other states to be able to get information that is crucial for them? That is very important. And because of that, you're able to build a trust for the public. Thank you. And what my last parting shot is that the future aviation security will not be defined only by compliance, but by resilient leadership, trusted partnership, and strategic adaptation. Thank you. Any question?
Thank you very much, Madam Millicent Henga, for elucidating elucidating the points very well. Merci beaucoup, mon ami, for that wonderful presentation. Allow me to encourage members to place your question in chat box so that the presenter will be gracious enough to handle them. Allow me to also mention that in the House, we have our secretary, the outgoing secretary to the committee, ACI Security Committee, Mr. My good friend, a very good friend, and who has done quite good work for us, Mr. Mustafa. I'm not so sure whether the vice president is in the House, but of course, once the end, we'll give them an opportunity just to say a word. Madam Bindu and Mustafa. Now, I have seen comments emanating all the way from Korea, all the way from Kilimanjaro International Airport to the great Niger, to South Africa, to Kenya, to Zambia. Allow me to quickly go to the first question as per the chat. Of course, I've seen Wabure Ben Moses from Uganda. Of course, that's just a comment. You are saying we are set here in Uganda. I'm sure you are having good time in the Pearl of Africa and you visit Nangulu Hills and the source of River Nile. We have Adonai Dulov, I think from Nigeria, or where he just spoke in French. We have Vitalis Luseka set in Kenya. We have Francisco Martin Bondia. Oh, Ogrebado. That is, allow me to say that. Bondia means how are you, Jambo, in Portuguese. I think that's just greetings. Next, we move to Adaje F. Banel just gave comment that the record is being recorded. We had comment from the chat from Justin Kasusi. This is a manager of, I know him, from Kilimanjaro International Airport, a great, well-grounded philosopher of aviation security, the manager there at Kilimanjaro International Airport in Tanzania. He says many small airports are facing an acute financial constraint. What could be the right strategies to maintain the operational excellence in security, and still maintain the customer experience? Madam, our speaker of the day, that's a good question. Allow me to repeat for you to note so that you get it right. Many small airports are facing an acute financial constraint. What could be the right strategies to maintain the operational excellence in security and still maintain customer experience? He goes on, Susi, I told you he's a philosopher on matters of aviation security. What can the aviation industry do for the geopolitical disruption which are facing airports and maintain operational excellence? Handle those two first, then I'll move to the subsequent questions so that we move consistently. Madam Milsen, do you get me? Are you able to get my... Or we get all questions from Mr. Kasusi, Justin from Kilimanjaro. The last one actually is about collaboration is nowadays a common terminologies in many aviation presentation, but you still see the collaboration is collaborating itself. Good one. Is this a journey or a destination? What are the strategies for collaboration? I think let's handle those three from Kilimanjaro International Airport, Tanzania. Ndugu kutoka Tanzania, Sunday.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much from that, from Kilimanjaro. Collaboration is very key, and I believe the best approach of doing that is first, we need to have very proper communication in terms of understanding within one government and the other. we must ensure that we have proper policies. And with that, we should be able to have proper collaboration in terms of training. I know we have done a lot, like now in my capacity where I do a lot of capacity building. We do a lot of collaborations with a number of states. We do it with Rwanda, we do it with Uganda, I mean Tanzania, Uganda, West African states, East African states. We have a lot of collaboration when it comes to training. And it's just about looking at how best we are able to be able to bridge the gap when it comes to the right training being empowered to all those entities. Because by the end of the day, we want a system in place where we have competent personnel across, not just competent in Kenya only. They have to be competent across the region. So first is we must have enablers. Leadership must be able to listen, to work together. And only ways of working together is when we have harmonized approaches, where we have policies in place that guides the two operations, that guides the two states in terms of good communication. And what are the areas, identify the key areas where the gaps are so that we're able to bring our heads together to have proper system in place. So it also depends on collaborating in what area. Okay, so that is very key. Yes, what was the other question, please?
Another question was in regard to small airports are facing acute financial constraint. What could be the right strategies to maintain the operation excellency in security and still maintain a customer experience?
Now that goes back to our oversight, because the oversight system as a state, remember earlier on we talked about the establishment, when I talked about the critical elements, we talked about the establishment of an oversight system. And here they are responsible to ensure they develop, implement, and maintain a national security program. Other than that, their responsibility is also to assist and guide states or guide airport stakeholders, operators on the best approaches. So we need to be able to, as a state, first the inspectors and the auditors through their regulations. They must put in place mechanisms. What is the bare minimum acceptable level? And what about the state? Are they able to finance such kind of, like now an example, minimizing the pressure from entities by having a common equipment that can be used to, can be shared by all other entities? That is one of the ways.
Okay, next.
Including training, having best training of the cost of training. That also can be another way of collaborating. You can also collaborate through having team approach, having group trainings are able to cut on costs tremendously. When it comes to operations at the airport, you should be in a position to be able to, as a community, remember we have the airport security program that brings together all entities. They should be in a position through the leadership, which is the appropriate authority, and the airport authority of that state. They should be able to come together through the security committees where that is discussed. The challenges are discussed in the security committees. And it is from there where they're supposed to be able to identify what are the key things for us to be able to implement the national security program. What are we lacking? So then what is it that the airport authority and the CAA can put in place to minimize the struggles that these small airports are going through, and therefore the entities within them? Because still by end of the day, the small airports, if you look at Annex 17, what is required, it's encouraging us to also put the same measures in our local airports. So then, because if you don't put that, then that is going to be an avenue for perpetrators to be able to come from the small airports into the main mother airports, that is the international airports. So it is a responsibility which definitely individual states must have in place, must have a discussion of the airport security committee, the members, because the security committee comprised of airlines, ground handlers, the national security agencies, the government, and all that stuff. What is not practicable, then, which is not within their means, they usually escalate it to the National Security Committee. And it becomes a government responsibility to see how best they're able to manage airports without much strain, at the same time maintaining the standards required. Thank you.
There's another good question from Kasusi, Kilimanjaro International Airport. He said, what can the aviation industry do for geopolitical disruption which are facing airports and maintain the operational excellence?
Okay, that is a very interesting one. The geopolitical one is it's almost not much can be done, because when you talk about politics, it's a state thing, it's a global thing. And so what, if you look at the oversight system, the legislation, that's why when you have a strong legislation, you will implement it as it is, without interference of the geopolitical and all that stuff. And so if we have proper harmonization, and that is where the ACI really comes in place when it comes to governance, to harmonize our policies so that we are able to embrace each other, so that we are having policies that are acceptable, that can be embraced across the region. Because it should not be difficult because of our interference, because of our misunderstanding on politics, then it's definitely hindering operations. Yet by the end of the day, we depend on each other's states. This one state depends on the regional state, the neighboring state and all that. And so when we are having a lot of geopolitical wars, it's hindering operations. And the only best way is for the top leadership, yes, to be able to do the buy-in of the states, meaning maybe the next kind of forum that should be organized by ACI is to bring the governance, the top leaderships of the states, yes, of the state leadership, so that we can create some awareness to them and see how critical harmonization is important, or collaboration is important, and how the geopolitics is affecting operations. And if it is geopolitics within an individual state, still it boils down to the strong measures we have. How have we strengthened our national quality control program, our legislations? Because if you have a strong legislation, then everybody's adhering to it, irrespective of your position.
Okay, yeah? There is a question from Samuel Akolo. He's asking about what is the relationship between ACI and the state CAA inspectorate.
ACI is here. I believe that I can best leave it to them to be able to respond, so that they can be able to bring out themselves, because I know how much they really do to states. So that I can leave to the ACI, so that we can get the top answer from that. Otherwise, they have a lot of responsibility. I know they have done quite a lot of good from state to state in terms of harmonizing our policies, our legislation, our governance, and all that stuff. So that I believe we can more be enhanced by the appropriate authority, by the ACI, and they're here. But ideally, they enable us have proper systems in place, proper policy, legislations, which is really going to prevent a lot of issues between borders and all that stuff, or governments or states.
Okay. Of course, the role of CAA cannot be re-emphasized about compliance, oversight, and all that. So ACI is the voice of airports in Africa, and it's important to understand that all airports are under auspices of ACI, and they have measures equivalent to, of course, they are not in competition with the state CAA, but there's a collaboration. So I'll move to the next question. Vitalis Luseka from Kenya Port Authority. What's the African position towards the use of AI in AFSEC? What is the African position towards the use of AI in AFSEC?
AI in AFSEC is, we all know AI is a new thing. It's in the block, and states are still thinking of the best approach they're able to give it. And there's no yet an agreed way forward that now this is how we are going to manage AI. If you realize each state is still running up and down on to put systems in place. Yes, so there is no already direction that we can state that this is where Africans have agreed that they are going to embrace AI when it comes to AFSEC or when it comes to operations of the aviation industry. Maybe moving forward in our next forums, we could be having such kind of agreements, maybe in workshops, working groups, and all that. We could be having such kind, but as of now, no. It is still like putting our houses in order and embracing AI, putting our systems in place to accept, because it's already here and we must embrace it. So it's upon individual states to be able, who have already started working on the best ways they were able to embrace or they're able to accept and balance. Because remember earlier on, I talked about balancing of technology and compliance and making it not a threat to the system just because we have embraced it. So that, to me, what I can be able to state on that is that there is no collective agreement on the approach of AI. However, if you look into place, there are already a lot of trainings going on pertaining to AI of individual states, or some already trying to collaborate. So that is the direction. Maybe moving forward in future, once all countries have really stabilized and understood how best AI is able to improve our systems, then we can be able to talk about what Africa has decided in terms of the direction to go when it comes to AI. But as at now, it has been used in a number of places. Yes, we have a number of systems that have been locked in AFSEC specifically, where you are able to monitor a behavior through the artificial intelligence system in place. So that has been embraced, not by all states, because it also depends on the capability of a state. It depends on the resources available and their understanding. Remember earlier we talked about the challenges of leadership from the top. If it is not well, then rest assured you're not going to have a state embracing AI in aviation and also in AFSEC, because it's like, oh, no, this is already a threat. But yet there are also a lot of benefits that can accrue out of that. So that with the time, we will monitor how it goes.
Okay, thank you very much. We are coming towards an end. I do know our colleagues, the Muslim colleagues from North Africa, East Africa, and West, and all that, maybe the time to go to the mosque. We are about to wind up. Allow me to probably only sample 2 questions or 3, then we close. Of course, the question from Abedi is in relation to AI again, how it can be used in security. Of course, in baggage handling and baggage resolution, issues of advanced passenger information can be useful. Pamela Mfume, how can AI strengthen AFSEC? Again, it's the same. Let me move to a different question. From Obedi, how can African countries harness emergence of artificial intelligence as the same? Mwamba, thanks for very well elaborate session, Millicent. I could not do it. I call it a tool of AFSEC. I think that's a comment. We have Abedwell Low from Niger. What role is ACI playing in cyber security to aviation security operation? I think that I'll leave it to Banel, who will comment, or Mustafa, or the manager for aviation security from Kennedy. The last one, Ahmed. I think we'll take Ahmed as the last question. Preventive security measures across Africa airports can be achieved through sustainable implementation of ICAO standard and recommended practice. However, just like what the speaker mentioned, we need to remove some obstacle in terms of some state legislation, but that can achieve through building trust, e.g. OSS, one-stop security. How many African airports implement a Windhoek declaration? I believe we must localize our AFSEC operation procedure in line with DOC 8973 and Annex 17. I think that's a general, it's not a question. But the last one, from Hillary, security is quite capital intensive, and in many cases, the timely release of funds remain a challenge to effective implementation and operation. I think that's equally a comment. Maybe your final submission mentioned within 30 seconds. Then I move to the secretary.
Maybe my final submission is that as member states or as states or governments, it is just crucial that we have support. We cannot be claiming that we are member states when we do not have supports of the industry. We must have our hands on there. We must lead. As I stated earlier on in the security culture, it must be led from the top. If you do not anchor it in the policy, it doesn't exist. And at the same time, we really appreciate ACI and other bodies that really support aviation security, because it's only from there that states have improved. If I look at where we were before, I remember when I was still in the operations at the Kenya Airports Authority, we heard about the ACI, they're coming there and they were improving a lot, quite a lot. There were a lot of changes we saw. Today, we are strongly seeing them around. And what is critical that is required generally in my last statement is that the states must really be able to give support. We must have proper leadership, and the proper leadership comes from understanding. We must have resources, must be availed. That's the funding, and they can only fund when they understand. So maybe ACI, we need to do a lot when it comes to more collaborating with governance so that we can be able to have proper systems. Otherwise, the future of aviation is technology. The future of aviation is personnel, trained, competent personnel, and therefore we must ensure we have strong workforce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Millicent. Allow me within 2 or 3 minutes, we'll be concluding. Kennedy, anything from ACI? Of course, we are joined by delegates from across Africa. I'm impressed. We had more than 75 plus. We had more than 100 registered, and delegates are logged in from all parts of Africa. I can see delegates from Nigeria, Miano, Vitalis, Hezbollah, from Kenya, Kiguso from Tanzania, from Abuja International Airport, Gendrix Obonyo, all the way from Korea, Mwamba from Zambia. We can see delegates from Ghana, Senegal, and all that. So my brother Kennedy, if you have any comment from ACI, then I'll give Mustafa a minute. Allow me, I'm not so sure whether the Vice President, Madam Bintu from West Africa joined, but as we come to an end, Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to share on cybersecurity, how ACI plays its role. ACI plays its role by providing guidance, training, advocacy, and best practice framework, ICAO requirement through initiatives such as cybersecurity capacity building. And I encourage members to attend ACI conference, which our next conference will be in Abuja, Nigeria. So please let us all join together during our security meetings and other related meetings. So we share all together, and from there, with the experience we get, we know how better to advance our operation. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Mustafa, our father and the great guru on aviation security.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am so sorry to be late to the conference. I want to thank the speaker about that topic. And I wish that we will meet all together in Abuja, the next conference, ASEAN conference. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for the attendance, and see you in Abuja, inshallah.
Thank you. Madam Vice President, are you on? I know she speaks French and she has learned good, but I suspect she may not be logged in. So allow me to conclude by appreciating all the delegates, people who were able to plug in for this inaugural webinar. In a very special way, allow me to single out Kennedy Ronjama, who is the manager security at ACI, but of course based at Kilimanjaro, at Dar es Salaam, of course at Tanzania, in Tanzania, Mr. Mustafa Jabari, who has been our long-serving secretary to the ACI Security Committee. Madam Banel, who is the secretariat at ACI, she's of course based in Senegal. She speaks very fluent French and English, and I don't know whether she has learned Arabic and Portuguese. Of course, Mr. Ramash, who was here, he's from the secretariat as well, but he's based in Mauritius. And all the delegates, I've seen all representation from all corners. I have no word to thank you, and our presenter, Madam Millicent, you have done justice to the topic. We appreciate your enormous wisdom that has flown and moved like River Nile, moving from the source in Uganda, moving through all the desert to the Mediterranean Ocean. Wisdom has flown. Members who took their time off to listen, we appreciate you. And please let us be ambassadors. As I said, ACI is the voice of airports in Africa. And of course, apart from Africa, we have ACI World. This is just but the beginning. We will be having more engagement of this webinar. And those who will manage to attend the ACI conference in Angola, in Nigeria, please feel free to get authorizations from your respective airports so that you can engage with other delegates, network, and also learn. From my end, as the president of the ACI committee, I appreciate and say bon dia, merci beaucoup, asanteni sana, terbian. Let's recess and have a good weekend ahead of you. Goodbye.